Aemond Targaryen is one of the clearest examples of what happens when a wounded child grows up with the largest dragon in the world. Aemond's story begins in the space between insult and power. He is a second son in a royal family, already breaking apart. A boy raised around claims, rumors, old grudges, and the knowledge that blood alone does not make everyone equal. In the court of King Viserys, every child is born into a political argument before they are old enough to understand it. By the time Aemond is grown, he becomes one of the most feared men in Westeros. Aemond becomes terrifying because he joins three dangerous things together: resentment, discipline, and Vhagar. That combination changes the dance of the dragons. In the book version of the story, Aemond is harsher than the show version in some important ways. House of the Dragon gives him more vulnerability. It shows the lonely boy behind the eye patch, the prince mocked by his brother, the child who wants a dragon of his own, and the young man who tries to frighten Lucerys but loses control of the situation. The show makes him more human, more wounded, and at times more tragic. Fire and blood is less forgiving. The book does not spend much time asking us to pity him. It presents him as bold, wild, hot-tempered, unforgiving, dangerous, and proud. It gives us the boy who claims Vhagar, the prince who loses an eye, the uncle who kills Lucerys, the warrior who helps destroy Rhaenys and Meleys, the regent who burns the riverlands, and the man who finally dies with Dark Sister through his remaining eye. Aemond is what happens when a family gives a wounded young prince the power of conquest, and then acts surprised when he uses it like a weapon. He was born in 110 AC, during the reign of King Viserys I. His father was Lucerys Targaryen, the king who spent much of his life trying to keep peace inside a family that was already becoming impossible to hold together. His mother was Alicent Hightower, the second queen of Viserys and daughter of Otto Hightower, one of the most influential political men of the age. That alone placed Aemond in the middle of the succession crisis. He was not born into a peaceful royal household. He was born into a court where his older half-sister Rhaenyra had already been named heir, even though many lords in Westeros still expected a son to inherit before a daughter. When Aegon was born before him, the problem became obvious. When Aemond followed, the problem deepened. Viserys now had sons by Alicent, but he still refused to remove Rhaenyra as his chosen successor. That decision shaped every child in the family. Rhaenyra's sons grew up knowing their mother's claim was official, but also knowing people whispered about their birth. Alicent's sons grew up knowing many people believed they should come before Rhaenyra, but also knowing their own father would not give them that place. The adults created the division. The children inherited it. Aemond's childhood cannot be separated from that atmosphere. He grows up as the second son of the king's second marriage, the younger brother of Aegon, the half-brother of Rhaenyra, and the uncle of Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey Velaryon. On paper, those boys are his nephews. In practice, they are rivals from a branch of the family his mother's faction believes has stolen what should belong to Alicent's sons. Aemond is not the firstborn son. That belongs to Aegon. He is not the gentle dreamer. That role belongs more to Helaena. He is not the faraway, promising younger brother in Old Town. That is Daemon. So Aemond becomes something else. He becomes the sharp one, the angry one, the one who cannot forget an insult. The book says that at birth, Aemond was half the size Aegon had been, but twice as fierce. That detail feels almost like prophecy. Aegon is bigger in position. Aegon is first in the male line. Aegon is the one Otto and Alicent's faction will eventually crown. But Aemond has the harder edge. He is not the heir, but he behaves like a boy determined never to be treated as small. That need follows him for the rest of his life. One of the defining facts of Aemond's early years is that he has no dragon of his own. For a Targaryen child, that matters deeply. Dragons are not only weapons, they are identity. They are proof of belonging. They are status within the family. A royal child without a dragon can still be a prince, but he stands beside siblings and relatives whose power is visible in the sky. Rhaenyra's sons have young dragons of their own. Aemond has nothing. The show leans into that humiliation very strongly. It shows Aemond being mocked with the pink dread, a pig fitted with makeshift wings, as if the other boys are saying he is not truly a dragon rider. That scene is a show creation, but it fits the spirit of the book because Aemond's lack of a dragon becomes central to his wounded pride. Book Aemond does not need that exact prank to make sense. His position already explains him. He is a Targaryen prince without the thing that makes Targaryens feel chosen. That changes in 120 AC. Aemond is 10 years old when he goes to Driftmark with his family for the funeral of Lucerys Velaryon. Rhaenyra had been the rider of Vhagar, the oldest and greatest living dragon in Westeros. Vhagar is not just any dragon. She is the dragon of Visenya Targaryen, one of the 3 dragons of Aegon's conquest. She fought in the wars that made the 7 kingdoms kneel. By the time of the dance, she is ancient, enormous, battle-hardened, and close to the size of Balerion in his later years. When Rhaenyra dies, Vhagar is riderless. That is the opportunity Aemond sees. Viserys tells him that after the funeral, they will go to Dragonstone, where Aemond may claim a hatchling or a dragon egg if he is bold enough. To Viserys, this may sound like encouragement. To Aemond, it sounds like an insult. A hatchling is not enough. An egg is not enough. Aemond does not want the smallest possible symbol of future power. He wants the greatest dragon alive. So he goes to claim Vhagar in secret. This is Aemond's first great accomplishment, and it should not be understated. Whatever else can be said about him, he does something incredibly dangerous as a child. Vhagar is not a gentle inheritance waiting for him. She is a massive, ancient war dragon. A grown man could die trying to approach her. A careless prince could be burned, crushed, or thrown before anyone had time to intervene. Aemond goes anyway. That tells us almost everything about him. He wants power, and he is willing to risk death for it. In the book, he is discovered by the young Joffrey Velaryon, who is only 3 years old. Aemond hits him, threatens him, and shoves him away before climbing onto Vhagar. This detail is important because it cuts against any overly heroic version of the moment. Aemond's courage is real, but it comes with cruelty even when he is still a boy. He does not simply claim a dragon. He hurts a child to keep the attempt secret. Then he mounts Vhagar. The dragon breaks free of her chains, and Aemond flies. For the first time in his life, he is not the dragonless prince. He circles the sky on the largest living dragon in the world. That is the moment Aemond is reborn. Before Vhagar, he can be mocked. After Vhagar, no one can laugh at him safely. Before Vhagar, he is the second son without a dragon. After Vhagar, he is bonded to a living weapon from the age of conquest. This is the most important turning point in Aemond's life. It gives him power, but it does not heal him. That is the tragedy. Aemond gains the thing he wanted most, but the boy who climbs down from Vhagar is still angry. He is still surrounded by family enemies. He still feels the insult of the years before. Vhagar gives him strength, but strength does not make him kinder. It gives his resentment wings. After the flight, Joffrey alerts his older brothers, Jacaerys and Lucerys. The confrontation turns violent. The boys fight with wooden training swords. Aemond calls Rhaenyra's sons Strongs, turning the whispered rumor about their parentage into a direct insult. Jace understands what it means. The fight escalates. Aemond gets the upper hand and beats Jace savagely. Then Lucerys draws a dagger and slashes Aemond's face, taking out his right eye. This is the second great turning point. Aemond gains Vhagar and loses an eye on the same night. That exchange defines him forever. He later says the trade was fair. He lost an eye, but gained a dragon. As a line, it sounds proud and almost triumphant. But pride does not mean the wound disappears. The missing eye becomes his identity. He becomes Aemond One Eye. Later, he wears an eye patch, and in the book, he eventually places the sapphire in the empty socket. There is something very Targaryen about that. Aemond does not hide the wound like a shameful thing. He turns it into an image. The missing eye becomes part of his legend. The sapphire makes injury look royal, cold, and unnatural. He transforms damage into intimidation. But the family never recovers from what happens that night. Alicent demands that Lucerys lose an eye in return. Viserys refuses. Rhaenyra demands that Aemond be questioned sharply about where he heard the word Strongs. That question matters because calling Rhaenyra's sons bastards is not just childish cruelty. If the accusation is accepted, it can become treason, succession crisis, and proof that Rhaenyra has placed illegitimate children in the line to the Iron Throne. Aemond eventually says he heard it from Aegon. The adults do what they often do in this story. They fail to solve the real problem. No one truly heals the wound. No one removes the hatred. No one finds a way to separate the children before they become weapons for adult factions. Viserys wants peace, but his version of peace often means forcing everyone to stop talking, while the injury stays alive underneath. For Aemond, that night becomes permanent. He has Vhagar now, but he also has a reason to hate Lucerys forever. He does not treat the loss of his eye as something settled by time. He carries it. He builds himself around it. Under the guidance of Sir Criston Cole, he becomes a dangerous swordsman. He grows into a young man known for discipline, severity, and menace. Unlike Aegon, who often appears careless and indulgent, Aemond seems focused. He is not the king, but he looks more like what people imagine a hard Targaryen prince should be. This becomes one of the quiet tensions inside the Green faction. By 127 AC, the family hatred is still alive. At a feast held after Viserys briefly appears healthier, Aemond makes his famous toast to Rhaenyra's sons, mocking them as strong boys. It is a clever insult because it sounds like praise while everyone understands the accusation underneath. It also proves that Aemond has not forgotten Driftmark. Years have passed, but he is still willing to reopen the wound in public. This is not just a mean joke. It is a political attack. By calling them strong, he is pointing again at Harwin Strong and the rumors surrounding Rhaenyra's children. He is reminding the court that the succession is built on something many people do not believe. He is also daring Jace, Luke, and Joffrey to react. Aemond understands insult as a weapon. He does not need to swing a sword to cut someone. The show adapts this well by making the dinner scene tense and personal. Viserys tries to hold the family together one last time, and for a moment it almost seems possible. Then Aemond's toast ruins the fragile peace. The show version shows how Aemond can sit calmly, speak politely, and still destroy the room. Aemond is not wild in the same sloppy way Aegon often is. His danger is colder. He can wait. He can watch. He can choose the line that will do the most damage. He is emotional, but he learns to wear emotion like armor. Then Viserys dies. In 129 AC, the crisis everyone has been avoiding finally arrives. The Greens crown Aegon II in King's Landing, despite Viserys having named Rhaenyra as his heir. Aemond is 19 years old when the Dance of the Dragons begins. At this point, Aemond is one of the greatest assets on the Green side. Aegon is king, but Aemond gives the Greens their strongest military advantage. Vhagar is the largest living dragon. Sunfire is beautiful and dangerous, but not equal to Vhagar in size or age. Dreamfire belongs to Helaena, who is not used as an aggressive war rider in the same way. Darren and Targaryen are away in Old Town. The Greens need Aemond because Aemond is the rider of the dragon no other living dragon can easily match. The first major mission of the war sends him to Storm's End. This is a smart choice by the Greens. House Baratheon matters. The Stormlands are powerful, and Lord Boros Baratheon cannot be ignored. His father, Boromund, had been close to Rhaenys, and therefore more favourable to the black side. But Boros is not his father. He wants terms. He wants marriage alliances. He wants to be courted. Aemond goes with something valuable to offer, himself. He promises to marry one of Boros Baratheon's daughters if Boros supports Aegon. That is a strong political move. Rhaenyra sends Lucerys with words and reminders of old oaths. The Greens send Aemond with a marriage pact, and Vhagar outside the walls. This is Aemond's first major accomplishment during the dance. He wins Storm's End for Aegon. That matters. The Greens need allies, and Aemond secures one of the great houses of Westeros. He proves he is not only a weapon in the sky. He can be used as a political instrument too. His marriage value, his royal blood, and the threat of Vhagar combine into a successful mission. But the same visit becomes the first great disaster of the war. Lucerys arrives at Storm's End as Rhaenyra's envoy. The sight of Luke enrages Aemond because Luke is the boy who took his eye. Aemond demands that Luke repay the debt. He wants an eye. Boros refuses to allow bloodshed beneath his roof, so Luke is allowed to leave. Then Maris Baratheon mocks Aemond. In the book, she asks whether Lucerys took one of his eyes or one of his manhood as well. That taunt matters because it hits Aemond exactly where he is weakest. Pride. He has just won Boros's support, but Lucerys is escaping untouched. The old wound is in front of him. The storm is outside. Vhagar is waiting. Aemond asks Boros for leave. Boros says that what Aemond does outside his hall is no concern of his. That answer opens the door. Aemond mounts Vhagar and goes after Lucerys. This is the moment he becomes Aemond the Kinslayer. In the book, the killing is direct. Aemond pursues Luke and Arrax in the storm and kills them over Shipbreaker Bay. There is no strong suggestion that it was an accident. Aemond avenges the loss of his eye by destroying his nephew and the small dragon he rides. Mushroom later claims that Aemond found Luke's body and removed both eyes to present them to Maris Baratheon. But that is one of those lurid claims that should be treated as uncertain. Fire and Blood includes it, but the history does not make it the safest version of events. What is certain is bad enough. The show makes it less intentional, but not innocent, because Aemond still begins the chase. He kills a boy who came as an envoy. He kills kin. He kills Rhaenyra's son before the war has fully opened. The show changes this in a major way. In House of the Dragon, Aemond chases Lucerys to scare him, but both riders lose control of their dragons. Arrax breathes fire at Vhagar, and Vhagar kills Arrax and Luke despite Aemond shouting for her to obey. That version does not make Aemond innocent, because he begins the chase and creates the danger, but it does make him more horrified by the result. The show turns the scene into a lesson about dragon power. Riding a dragon does not mean truly controlling one. The book version is crueler. Book Aemond is not a boy who made a mistake and immediately understood the horror. He becomes a kinslayer in the eyes of his enemies, and when the news reaches King's Landing, the reaction is divided. Alicent and Otto despair because they understand the political disaster. Aegon celebrates and throws a feast for him. That contrast says a lot about the Greens. Otto sees the consequence. Alicent sees the sin. Aegon sees revenge. Aemond becomes the man who has answered the old wound with death. This action changes the dance completely. Before Luke's death, there is still a small possibility that the conflict might be contained through negotiation, hostages, threats, or settlement. After Shipbreaker Bay, that possibility becomes much weaker. Rhaenyra has lost a son. Daemon now has a reason to answer blood with blood. Aemond's revenge gives the Blacks a martyr and the war its first great kinslaying. Aemond's accomplishment at Storm's End and his mistake at Shipbreaker Bay cannot be separated. He wins Boros Baratheon. Then he turns that success into catastrophe. That pattern follows him throughout the war. Aemond is powerful enough to change events, but not wise enough to always control what his changes unleash. Daemon responds with blood and cheese. Aemond is not the victim who dies in that revenge, but he is the cause of it. Daemon promises a son for a son, and through Mysaria, blood and cheese enter the Red Keep. They do not kill Aemond. They do not kill the man who slew Luke. Instead, they murder Jaehaerys, the young son of Aegon and Helaena. That is one of the darkest turns of the dance. Aemond kills Luke, and Jaehaerys dies for it. The punishment falls on a child. This is part of Aemond's significance, even when he is not physically present. His violence creates echoes that land on other people. Luke dies because of Aemond's old wound. Jaehaerys dies because Daemon wants revenge for Luke. Helaena is broken by the murder of her son. Aegon becomes more enraged. The war grows uglier, not because one side alone is monstrous, but because each act gives the next person permission to go further. Aemond is one of the first princes to push the dance into that kind of war. After blood and cheese, the Greens need military strength more than ever. Aegon is king, but rage does not make him safe. Rhaenyra's faction has Dragonstone, the Velaryon fleet, Daemon, Rhaenys, several dragons, and growing support. The Greens cannot sit forever behind the walls of King's Landing. The next major turning point is Rook's Rest. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen rides Meleys to defend the castle of Rook's Rest from Sir Criston Cole's attack. The Greens have prepared a trap. Aegon comes on Sunfire. Aemond comes on Vhagar. This is Aemond's first major dragon battle of the dance. In the book, the two brothers and their dragons attack Rhaenys and Meleys. Meleys is a formidable dragon, and Rhaenys is not an easy target. The fight is brutal. Rhaenys and Meleys die. Aegon is terribly wounded, and Sunfire is badly hurt. Aemond and Vhagar remain unharmed. From the Green perspective, this is one of Aemond's greatest military accomplishments. Rhaenys is not just any rider. She is the queen who never was, an experienced Targaryen princess, and one of Rhaenyra's most important allies. Meleys is one of the strongest dragons on the black side. Removing them from the war is a huge victory. It weakens Rhaenyra militarily and emotionally. It also proves again that Vhagar is the most terrifying dragon alive. But Rook's Rest also changes Aemond's position inside the Green faction. Aegon is so badly injured that he cannot rule actively. His body is burned and broken. He survives, but he is no longer the same king in the immediate aftermath. Someone must rule in his place. Aemond becomes Prince Regent and protector of the realm. This is the closest Aemond ever comes to the throne. He does not become king, but he takes power while Aegon recovers. He wears Aegon the Conqueror's iron and ruby crown, and is said to remark that it looks better on him than it ever did on Aegon. That line is perfectly Aemond. It reveals pride, ambition, and contempt for his older brother in a single image. Aemond has spent his life as the second son. Now the crown rests on his head, even if only as regent. This is one of the most important parts of his character. Aemond may fight for Aegon's cause, but that does not mean he sees Aegon as superior. In many ways, Aemond looks like the more disciplined, dangerous, and kingly brother. He is a better warrior. He rides the greater dragon. He seems more serious. He is more frightening. But the rules of birth place Aegon above him. That resentment is never far away. The show pushes this even further. In the House of the Dragon, Aemond's relationship with Aegon is more openly poisoned. Aegon humiliates him. Aemond despises Aegon's weakness. At Rook's Rest, the show makes Aemond's actions toward Aegon far more suspicious and direct, suggesting that he may be willing to let his brother burn, or even help cause his downfall. That is a major show emphasis. The book tells us Aemond and Aegon both fought Rhaenys, but it does not present the same clear fratricidal moment the show builds. For a book-focused script, that distinction matters. Book Aemond benefits from Aegon's injury. Show Aemond may be shown as taking a more active role in it. Either way, the result is the same. Aemond rises. As Prince Regent, he now has the authority he never had as a child. He can move armies. He can make decisions. He can sit in the place of rule while the king suffers. For someone like Aemond, that should be the moment where discipline and strategy prove themselves. Instead, his regency reveals the limits of his mind. Aemond is not stupid. He is brave, dangerous, trained, and politically aware enough to win Storm's End. But he is not Otto Hightower. He is not a patient architect. He is not a king built for balancing the realm. His instincts are shaped by injury and retaliation. He sees problems as enemies to be struck. With Vhagar beneath him, that instinct becomes devastating. He gathers an army with Criston Cole and marches toward Harrenhal to confront Daemon. On paper, this makes sense. Harrenhal matters. Daemon has taken it, and his presence in the riverlands is a threat to the Greens. If Aemond can defeat Daemon, he removes one of Rhaenyra's most dangerous supporters. Vhagar against Caraxes is a risk, but Aemond has the larger dragon. He may believe this is the moment to destroy his uncle's legend and claim his place as the dominant Targaryen warrior of the war. But while Aemond and Criston move, King's Landing falls. This is one of Aemond's greatest strategic failures. The capital is the heart of Aegon's rule. The Iron Throne, the Red Keep, Alicent, Helena, the royal symbols, the machinery of government, all of it depends on holding King's Landing. Aemond leaves the city vulnerable while chasing Daemon at Harrenhal. Rhaenyra and Daemon take advantage of his absence. The Blacks enter the city, and the Green regime collapses there. Aemond wanted to hunt the threat. He left the throne exposed. This is where Aemond's character becomes most damaging to his own side. A patient regent might have focused on defending the capital, securing supply lines, managing alliances, and coordinating with the Hightower host and other Green armies. Aemond wants the decisive strike. He wants Daemon. He wants to use Vhagar's overwhelming power as a solution. That choice cost the Greens King's Landing. When Aemond reaches Harrenhal, Daemon is gone. Instead of the enemy he wanted, Aemond finds Sir Simon Strong and the remaining Strongs of Harrenhal. In the book, he orders the deaths of Simon Strong and his kin. Alys Rivers is spared and becomes Aemond's bedmate. This is another dark point in his history. Aemond does not simply take the castle. He exterminates House Strong at Harrenhal, except for Alys. That act is partly vengeance, partly intimidation, and partly the behavior of a prince who has learned that dragons make punishment easy. The Strongs are tied to Rhaenyra's sons through the rumors about Harwin Strong. Harrenhal itself is tied to the old political rot at the center of the succession. Aemond turns that place into a scene of death. Alys Rivers changes his story. She is mysterious, older than she appears according to some accounts, and rumored to be a witch or woods witch. She becomes Aemond's lover, or at least his bedmate in the book's language. Later, she is said to be pregnant when Aemond goes to face Daemon. After the war, she claims to be Aemond's widow, and presents a boy she says is their true-born son and rightful king. That means Aemond may have left a child behind. The certainty is not clean. Fire and Blood presents Alys through rumor and later reports, but her connection to Aemond is real enough to matter. She is not a passing detail. She becomes the last intimate figure attached to him before his death. The show has started adapting this connection differently, giving Aemond and Alys a more direct meeting and a charged dynamic at Harrenhal. That makes sense for television, because Alys is one of the few people who can make Aemond feel less like an unstoppable weapon, and more like a young man standing near something he does not fully understand. In the book, Alys becomes part of his final transformation. After Harrenhal, Aemond abandons Criston's host to burn the riverlands from Dragonback. This is another major mistake. Criston continues with the Green Army. Aemond takes Vhagar and begins burning black-aligned settlements throughout the riverlands. From a terror perspective, this is effective. No castle, town, field, or village can feel safe when Vhagar is in the sky. Aemond can punish lands that support Rhaenyra. He can spread fear faster than an army can march. But terror is not the same as strategy. Aemond burns, but he does not solve the larger war. While he devastates the riverlands, Criston Cole's army is left vulnerable. The Green War effort becomes divided. Aemond has the greatest dragon alive, but instead of using that power to coordinate with his allies and protect major positions, he becomes a roaming disaster. He is feared everywhere and useful less often than he should be. That is the central failure of Aemond as a commander. He has unmatched destructive power, but he does not turn that power into stable victory. Aemond is a weapon. The tragedy for the Greens is that he is often a weapon without the restraint needed to aim him properly. That becomes clearer after the fall of King's Landing. Aemond has Vhagar. He has the crown of the Conqueror on his head as Prince Regent. He has the fear of the realm behind him. On paper, he should be the one person most capable of dragging the Green cause back from disaster, but the capital is gone. Rhaenyra has taken the Iron Throne. Alicent and Helaena are her prisoners. Otto Hightower is dead. The machinery of government that the Greens seized after Viserys' death has slipped out of their hands. Aegon II is badly injured and hidden away. The side Aemond is supposed to lead has lost its center. This is where Aemond's greatest weakness as a wartime leader becomes obvious. He is terrifying in a direct confrontation, but a civil war is not only won by terrifying people. A king, regent, or commander has to hold places, feed armies, protect allies, manage fear, and decide when destruction helps and when it only creates more enemies. Aemond has the dragon to punish almost anyone. What he lacks is the patience to turn punishment into stable power. After learning that King's Landing has fallen, Aemond does not become cautious. he becomes more dangerous. The riverlands become the main stage of his rage. He and Vhagar begin burning castles, towns, fields, and settlements that support Rhaenyra. This is one of his most significant actions in the dance, because it shows what Vhagar means when she is used not only against dragons, but against ordinary people and the land itself. A battle has limits. A campaign of dragonfire does not always feel like it does. When Vhagar flies overhead, the war becomes unequal in the most horrifying way. A lord can gather men, sharpen spears, and close gates. But none of that matters much when the largest living dragon descends from the sky. Aemond can strike where armies cannot reach quickly. He can turn loyalty to Rhaenyra into a death sentence for villages that have no real defense. This is an accomplishment in the narrowest military sense. He spreads fear. He makes the riverlands bleed. He proves that as long as he and Vhagar live, Rhaenyra's supporters cannot feel safe. But it is also a major strategic failure. Burning the riverlands does not retake King's Landing. It does not restore Aegon to the throne. It does not save Criston Cole's army. It does not heal the fracture inside the Green Cause. It does not make Aemond loved, obeyed, or trusted. It makes him feared, and fear is powerful. But fear alone cannot rebuild a losing war. This is where Aemond differs from someone like Otto Hightower. Otto's problem is that he thinks too much in terms of councils, symbols, legal arguments, and controlled moves. Aemond's problem is almost the opposite. He has so much raw power that he begins acting as if fire itself is strategy. If a place supports the enemy, burn it. If a house resists, punish it. If Daemon is out there somewhere, keep tearing through the riverlands until he answers. That is not leadership. It is a challenge written in ash. The show version of Aemond can make this even more personal, because it has already shown him as someone who wants control, hates humiliation, and despises weakness. When the show gives him quiet moments, it usually sharpens the violence instead of softening it. You understand that Aemond is not randomly cruel. He is driven by a need to never again be the powerless boy without a dragon. But understanding where that comes from does not excuse what he becomes. Book Aemond has less visible psychology, but the result is more brutal. He becomes Aemond One-Eye in childhood. He becomes Aemond the Kinslayer after Shipbreaker Bay. In the Riverlands, he becomes something closer to a living punishment. Alys Rivers remains with him through this period, and her presence adds a strange shadow to his story. Alys is difficult to explain cleanly because fire and blood never turns her into a simple court lady. She is called a bastard of House Strong, though some accounts say she was older than she appeared. She is connected with Harrenhal, with rumour, with prophecy, with witchcraft, and with the uneasy atmosphere around that cursed castle. Whether she truly has magical power, whether she understands future events, or whether later stories exaggerate her reputation is left uncertain. What is certain is that Aemond keeps her close. That is important because Aemond is not usually shown as a man ruled by tenderness. His connection with Alys is one of the few relationships in his life that feels private, rather than purely political or military. She is not a wife chosen for alliance like the Baratheon match promised at Storm's End. She is not a sibling trapped inside the Green faction. She is not a courtier trying to flatter the regent. She is something stranger. Aemond spares her when he kills the strongmen of Harrenhal. He takes her as his bedmate. When he later goes to face Daemon, she is pregnant, or at least believed to be. After the war, she will claim to be his widow and present a child she says is his son. That possibility gives Aemond's story a lingering aftershock. He dies young, but rumors of his blood do not disappear immediately. If Alys's child was truly his, then Aemond leaves behind a possible son, born from violence, mystery, and the ruins of Harrenhal. Fire and blood does not give that child a clean royal future. Instead, it leaves the claim in the realm of uncertainty, which fits Aemond's ending. His legacy is not stability. It is fear, rumour, and unfinished danger. The show comparison here can be useful because House of the Dragon has more room to make Alys important before the God's Eye. The book tells us the outcome. Alys becomes tied to Aemond. The show can explore the process. It can make their connection seductive, threatening, political, magical, or all of those at once. But for the book, this is the safest version. Alys Rivers becomes Aemond's bedmate at Harrenhal, is believed pregnant by him, and later claims a royal future through his child. While Aemond burns through the riverlands, the Green War effort suffers elsewhere. Criston Cole, now Hand of the King, leads an army through hostile country. Without Aemond and Vhagar beside him, Criston's position becomes far more dangerous. The Greens have lost King's Landing, and their forces are scattered between different fronts. Instead of using Vhagar to support a coordinated campaign, Aemond turns into a separate terror moving across the map. This decision helps lead to Criston's downfall. Criston Cole eventually dies after Aemond abandons the main Green host in the Riverlands. His death removes another major Green commander from the war. Aemond does not personally kill Criston, but his decision to separate from him leaves Criston more vulnerable. This is the kind of mistake that does not look as dramatic as killing Luke or burning towns, but it matters deeply. Aemond has the greatest dragon alive, yet his side keeps losing structure around him. That is the paradox of his power. He is individually overwhelming. Strategically, he is not enough. Aemond seems to understand that Daemon is the enemy who matters most to him. This is not only because Daemon supports Rhaenyra, it is because Daemon is the older version of the kind of prince Aemond wants to defeat. Daemon has the reputation, the Valyrian steel sword, the battle experience, the dangerous charisma, and the dragon caraxes. If Aemond kills Daemon, he does more than win a battle. He replaces a legend. That hunger is part of what drives him. The dance has many conflicts inside it, but Aemond and Daemon feel almost designed to collide. They are uncle and nephew, both second sons in the emotional sense, both violent Targaryen princes, both dragon riders, both feared by enemies and distrusted by allies. Daemon is older, more experienced, more complicated, and more tired by the end. Aemond is younger, harsher, and still burning with the need to prove himself. Aemond has Vhagar. Daemon has caraxes. Aemond has size. Daemon has experience. Aemond has rage. Daemon has calculation. That is why the final duel works so well. It is not just two dragons meeting in the sky. It is the war narrowing down to two different versions of Targaryen danger. But Daemon does not give Aemond the fight immediately. For a time, Daemon and Nettles search for him. Rhaenyra wants Aemond found and destroyed because Vhagar is too dangerous to leave loose. Daemon and Nettles use caraxes and Sheepstealer to hunt through the riverlands. Aemond, meanwhile, is not easy to trap. Vhagar can move quickly and strike where expected defenses are weakest. Eventually, Rhaenyra's suspicion of Nettles changes everything. After Hugh Hammer and Ulf White betray the Blacks at Tumbleton, Rhaenyra loses trust in the Dragon Seeds. Adam of Hull is suspected despite his loyalty. Nettles is suspected too, especially after rumours spread about her closeness with Daemon. Rhaenyra orders Nettles killed at Maidenpool. Daemon learns of the order and lets Nettles escape on Sheepstealer. Then Daemon sends his challenge. He tells Aemond to meet him at Harrenhal. This is the beginning of the end. For Aemond, the challenge is impossible to ignore. He has been hunting glory, revenge, dominance, and proof of superiority for most of his life. Daemon is the one opponent whose death would answer all of that. If Aemond kills Daemon, he destroys Rhaenyra's most dangerous defender. He proves Vhagar is supreme. He becomes the prince who ended the rogue prince. But the challenge is also a trap in a deeper sense. Not because Daemon plans to survive through clever escape, because Daemon is willing to die. That is what Aemond may not fully understand. Daemon at Harrenhal is not the same kind of opponent as a younger prince chasing status. By this point, Daemon has lost too much. Rhaenyra's trust has cracked. Nettles has been sent away. The war has become poisonous. Daemon is still dangerous, but he is no longer fighting like a man with a peaceful future waiting behind him. Aemond comes to Harrenhal with Alys Rivers. Daemon waits there for him. The book says Daemon waits 13 days. That detail gives the scene a strange quietness before the violence. Aemond, who has spent so much of the war moving with fire and speed, is met by Daemon's stillness. Harrenhal itself adds to the atmosphere. It is a ruined monument to pride, melted by Velaryon during Aegon's conquest, cursed in memory, and soaked in the histories of houses destroyed by ambition. There could be no better stage for Aemond's last day. When the two princes finally face each other, there is no army to decide the result for them. No council can interrupt. No father can demand peace. No mother can plead for restraint. No brother can mock from a safe distance. All the politics that made them has burned away, leaving only the thing House Targaryen always trusted most. Dragons. They rise above the god's eye. This battle is one of the most famous moments in Fire and Blood, and it has to be explained carefully because its power comes from both spectacle and meaning. Vhagar is the larger dragon. She is ancient, massive, and battle-tested across generations. She was alive during the conquest. She carried Visenya. She fought in the wars that built Targaryen rule. By the dance, she is the closest thing left to old Valyrian terror in Westeros. Caraxes is smaller, but he is not weak. He is fierce, experienced, lean, savage, and perfectly matched to Daemon's aggressive style. Caraxes has fought before. He is not a young dragon thrown into a hopeless fight. He is one of the most dangerous dragons of the age. Even so, Vhagar's size gives Aemond the obvious advantage. Daemon knows that. So the fight does not become a clean contest of strength. It becomes a death bargain. Caraxes attacks Vhagar with everything he has. The dragons crash together in the sky, locked in flame, teeth, claws and blood. Caraxes clamps onto Vhagar's neck. Vhagar tears into Caraxes' belly. Neither dragon escapes cleanly. They become a falling mass of old power, destroying itself above the lake. Then Daemon makes the leap. He jumps from Caraxes onto Vhagar with Dark Sister in his hand. In mid-air, during the fall, he drives the Valyrian steel sword through Aemond's remaining eye. That is Aemond's death. It is one of the most shocking deaths in the entire Targaryen history because it is so personal. Aemond does not die anonymously in Dragonfire. He does not simply fall from the sky. He is killed by the older prince he wanted to challenge, with the sword of House Targaryen thrust through the same place where his identity had been built, the eye. The symbolism is almost too perfect. Aemond loses one eye as a child and turns that wound into his legend. He dies when Daemon puts Dark Sister through the other. The dragons fall into the god's eye. Vhagar dies in the lake. Aemond's body is later found still chained to Vhagar's saddle, with Dark Sister in his eye socket. Caraxes manages to crawl from the water and dies near Harrenhal. Daemon's body is never found. For Aemond, there is no mystery of survival. His corpse is discovered. The Sapphire Prince, the rider of Vhagar, the Kinslayer, the Regent, the terror of the riverlands, all of it ends under black water with a sword through his skull. That ending is both spectacular and fitting. Aemond spends his life trying to turn injury into power. At the end, the injury becomes the doorway through which death reaches him. He dies at 20 years old. That is easy to forget because Aemond's actions are so enormous. He claims the largest dragon alive. He kills Lucerys. He helps bring down Rhaenys. He becomes Prince Regent. He burns the riverlands. He faces Daemon. His life feels huge because the damage he causes is huge. But he is still very young when he dies. That matters. Aemond is not an old tyrant who spent decades ruling cruelly. He is a young prince shaped by family hatred, court politics, humiliation, violence, and access to impossible power. That does not excuse him. It makes the tragedy sharper. Westeros gives a wounded 19-year-old Vhagar and then watches him behave like a conqueror without wisdom. His accomplishments are real. But every accomplishment is tied to a cost. That is the pattern of Aemond's life. To the Greens, he is their greatest weapon after the war begins. Without Aemond and Vhagar, Aegon's cause is far weaker. Storm's End may not be secured the same way. Rhaenys may not die at Rook's Rest. Rhaenyra's forces would have less reason to fear open movement. Aemond matters because Vhagar matters, and because he is willing to use her. To the Blacks, he is a kinslayer, murderer, and terror. He kills Luke. He destroys towns. He burns people who cannot fight him. He represents the worst version of Targaryen power. A prince using a dragon not as a symbol of rule, but as a personal answer to humiliation. To readers, he is one of the most compelling figures in the dance because he is both understandable and unforgivable. But understanding those things does not change what he does with them. That is what makes Aemond more interesting than a simple monster. He is not cruel because the story needs someone to be cruel. He becomes cruel through a chain of injuries, choices, rewards, and failures. Every time he reaches for power, the world teaches him that violence works. Claim Vhagar, and you stop being mocked. Threaten Luke, and you feel strong. Kill Luke, and Aegon celebrates you. Burn the riverlands, and everyone fears you. Challenge Daemon, and history remembers you forever. Aemond Targaryen is what happens when a royal family refuses to heal its children and then hands them dragons. He is not the cause of the dance by himself. Otto, Alicent, Viserys, Rhaenyra, Daemon, Aegon, Criston, and the great houses all play their parts. But Aemond escalates the war at critical moments. Shipbreaker Bay is one of the first major points where the conflict becomes personal blood revenge. Rook's Rest removes a major black dragon rider, but destabilizes his own brother's rule. His Riverlands campaign spreads destruction without saving the capital. His final duel kills Vhagar, the greatest green dragon, removing the most powerful weapon his side had left. In that sense, Aemond is both asset and disaster. He gives the Greens strength. He also helps spend that strength recklessly. The show version makes him more openly tragic because it lets us see the fear under the pride. We see the mocked child, the young man who wants to be taken seriously, the brother humiliated by Aegon, the rider who realizes too late that Vhagar is not a toy he fully commands. That version adds layers of regret and insecurity. The book version is harder, sharper, and more frightening. Book Aemond does not need the audience to forgive him. Fire and Blood records what he does and lets the scale of it speak. He wins a dragon, loses an eye, kills a prince, helps burn a princess, wears the crown as regent, destroys the riverlands, and dies in one of the most legendary dragon battles ever fought. To understand Aemond Targaryen properly, it helps to separate two things that are often mixed together: his accomplishments and his consequences. Aemond does achieve things that no one can honestly ignore. Claiming Vhagar at 10 years old is one of the boldest acts of any young Targaryen in this period. Securing Storm's End gives the Greens a major alliance at the beginning of the dance. Fighting at Rook's Rest helps remove Rhaenys and Meleys from the war. Becoming Prince Regent makes him one of the most powerful men in Westeros, even if only for a short time. His final battle against Daemon becomes one of the most famous dragon duels in history. But Aemond's life proves that achievement without judgment can ruin the person who achieved it. He finally gets his duel with Daemon, but that duel kills him, Vhagar, Caraxes, and one of the last great pieces of Targaryen dragon power. He is not useless. He is not weak. He is not a coward hiding behind Vhagar. He is brave, disciplined, ambitious, and willing to risk himself in ways many princes would never dare. The problem is that his courage is tied too closely to resentment. His confidence is tied too closely to humiliation. His sense of justice is tied too closely to revenge. That makes him dangerous in a way the Greens never fully control. Aemond's story also works because he is such a sharp contrast to Aegon II. Aegon is the elder son. Aegon is crowned. Aegon is the official Green King. But in many ways, Aemond looks more like the weapon Otto and Alicent would have wanted. He trains harder. He carries himself with more discipline. He does not have Aegon's public weakness for drunkenness and indulgence. He appears more focused, more serious, and more frightening. Yet he is not the chosen son. That matters. Aemond spends his entire life beside power, rather than fully inside it. As a child, he stands beside dragon riders without a dragon. As a prince, he stands beside Aegon without being heir. As a warrior, he becomes more dangerous than his brother, but still fights for his brother's crown. As regent, he wears power temporarily, but the throne is never truly his. That position feeds the worst parts of him. A firstborn prince can be arrogant because the world has already placed him above others. A second son like Aemond has a different wound. He has to prove that birth order does not define worth. He has to prove he is not less. He has to prove that the eye he lost did not weaken him. He has to prove that the years without a dragon did not make him small. Vhagar gives him the proof. The tragedy is that he never stops proving it. Even after claiming the largest dragon alive, Aemond still behaves like the insult is fresh. That is why Lucerys matters so much to him. Luke is not only the boy who cut him. Luke represents the old humiliation that power did not erase. When Aemond sees him at Storm's End, it is not just politics. It is childhood returning with a knife in its hand. This is where the show and the book create different kinds of Aemond. The show makes him easier to understand emotionally. You see the boy mocked for not having a dragon. You see him claim Vhagar not as a spoiled prince casually taking what he wants, but as a desperate child reaching for the one thing that will change how everyone sees him. You see him lose control over Vhagar above Shipbreaker Bay, and for a moment, his face shows horror. That version of Aemond is still guilty, but the show wants the audience to feel the difference between wanting to frighten someone and causing a death he cannot take back. The book does not soften him that way. In Fire and Blood, Aemond's killing of Lucerys is treated as deliberate. The history does not spend much time showing regret. It gives us the act and the title that follows, Kinslayer. That word is devastating in Westeros. Kinslaying is not just murder. It is one of the deepest taboos in the culture, And for the Targaryens, it carries even more weight, because the family has always relied on blood to justify its special place. Aemond breaks that bond openly. This is why Book Aemond feels more dangerous. He does not only lose control, he chooses to answer an old wound with death. The show asks what happens when a proud boy realizes dragons are not fully obedient. The book asks what happens when a proud boy gets exactly the weapon he wanted and uses it against his own blood. Both versions work, but they create different meanings. Show Aemond is tragic because he thinks he can control fear until fear becomes real. Book Aemond is terrifying because he treats fear as a tool from the beginning. The eye is central in both versions. After Driftmark, Aemond's missing eye becomes more than an injury. It becomes a symbol he builds around himself. He does not retreat from the wound. He turns it into an identity. The eye patch makes him severe. The sapphire in the book makes him almost unnatural. It is as if he replaces softness with a jewel, flesh with image, boyhood with legend. He understands presentation. He may not be a politician like Otto, but he knows how to make himself look dangerous. The eye patch, the sword training, Vhagar, the cold posture, the controlled voice, the insult hidden inside a toast. All of it creates a prince who feels like a threat even before he acts. That image helps him, but it also traps him. Once a person becomes known as the dangerous one, every room expects danger from him. Every insult becomes a challenge. Every moment of restraint looks like weakness. Aemond builds a reputation so sharp that he has to keep cutting people with it. His relationship with Criston Cole also matters here. Criston is not Aemond's father, but he becomes one of the major male influences around the Green Princes. He trains them. He hates Rhaenyra. He has his own bitterness, his own sense of dishonor, and his own need to punish the side he believes wronged him. For Aemond, Criston's training gives discipline to anger. That is more dangerous than anger alone. Aemond is not a drunken boy swinging wildly. He becomes a trained prince with a trained body, a sharp mind, a powerful grudge, and Vhagar beneath him. That combination is what makes him so valuable to the Greens at the start of the war. Aegon may be crowned, but Aemond is the figure enemies have to calculate around. Rhaenyra's side can think about alliances, fleets, oaths, and armies, but every plan must include the same terrible fact. Vhagar is alive, and Aemond rides her. This is also why his actions are so costly when he misuses that power. A smaller prince might make a mistake and lose a skirmish. Aemond makes a mistake and changes the war. At Storm's End, he wins a great house, and then ruins the political value of that success by killing Luke. Boros Baratheon's support matters, but the death of Rhaenyra's son matters more. It hardens the Blacks. It gives Daemon a target for revenge. It pushes the dance into a place where children begin paying for the crimes of adults. At Rook's Rest, Aemond helps deliver a major blow against the Blacks, but the battle leaves his own brother nearly destroyed. Whether the show leans into suspicion or the book keeps the focus on the brutal three-dragon fight, the result is politically explosive. The king survives, but he is burned, broken, and removed from active rule. Aemond rises because Aegon falls. That rise is one of the most revealing parts of Aemond's story. When he becomes Prince Regent, he does not suddenly become a wise ruler. He becomes a prince with more authority than restraint. He wears the conqueror's crown and makes the remark that it looks better on him than it did on Aegon. That line is not just arrogance. It is the voice of a second son who has spent years seeing the unworthy brother placed above him. For a moment, the world seems to agree with Aemond. Aemond now holds power through action. But the dance does not reward him with stable rule. It exposes the difference between being terrifying and being effective. The fall of King's Landing is the great proof. Aemond leaves the capital to face Daemon and the threat at Harrenhal. This is understandable on one level. Daemon is extremely dangerous. Harrenhal is strategically important. Caraxes is one of the few dragons that can make even Aemond think carefully. Removing Daemon would be a huge victory, but Aemond misjudges the larger picture. The capital is the symbol and center of Aegon's reign. Losing it damages the green claim more than any burned village helps it. Rhaenyra taking the Iron Throne changes the whole perception of the war. Suddenly, the queen the Greens tried to deny is sitting where they once placed Aegon. Alicent and Helena are prisoners. Otto is executed. The Green Court is scattered. Aemond goes to kill a dragon rider and loses a city. That is one of his greatest mistakes. It does not mean he is stupid. It means he is drawn toward the kind of problem he knows how to solve. Daemon is a warrior. Daemon can be hunted. Daemon can be fought. Daemon can be killed. Aemond understands that language. Managing the fear of small folk, the loyalty of the city watch, the movement of enemies by sea, and the psychology of a city after months of war requires a different kind of mind. Otto had that mind, even if Otto's choices helped cause the crisis. Aemond does not. Aemond is made for confrontation. The war needs governance. That mismatch is what makes his regency fail. When he takes Harrenhal and kills the strongmen, he proves again that he can punish enemies. The act is significant because it removes a house connected to Rhaenyra's rumoured past and turns Harrenhal into Aemond's own dark seat for a time. But it does not solve the loss of King's Landing. It does not bring back Aegon's strength. It does not rebuild green authority. The murder of the Strongs also deepens Aemond's image as a man who answers uncertainty with blood. Harwin Strong is dead long before this, but the insult of strong boys still lives in the conflict. Aemond's hatred of Rhaenyra's sons, the parentage rumours, and the old Driftmark wound all connect to how strong in the political imagination. At Harrenhal, Aemond turns that symbolic hatred into execution. Only Alys Rivers is spared. Alys is the most unusual relationship in his life because she does not fit the role of frightened captive, political bride, sibling, or rival. She belongs to Harrenhal's strange atmosphere. She is tied to rumour, prophecy, age, magic, and uncertainty. Whether she truly manipulates events or simply survives by understanding powerful men better than they understand themselves, she becomes attached to Aemond at the end of his life. Their connection gives Aemond one final human complication. He is not only burning fields and hunting Daemon, he is also sleeping beside a woman the histories cannot fully explain, and possibly leaving a child behind. That does not soften what he does, but it makes his final month stranger. Aemond, who spends so much of his life defined by visible wounds and public violence, ends up tied to one of the most mysterious women in the story. If the show expands Alys, it can use her to reveal sides of Aemond the book only hints at. She can become temptation, mirror, prophecy, comfort, manipulation, or some mixture of all of them. But the book's version remains powerful because it refuses to explain too much. Aemond's last private attachment is not clean romance. It is a shadow at Harrenhal. Then comes the decision that helps doom Criston Cole. Aemond abandons Criston's main host and chooses to burn the riverlands from Dragonback. That wording matters. He does not simply take a normal detour. He leaves the Green Army without the protection of Vhagar. The one weapon that could have changed the confidence of every soldier marching under the green banners. Criston is left to face enemies in a hostile region without the prince who made the campaign terrifying. The Butcher's Ball follows later, and Criston dies. Aemond is not there to save him. The Green Host suffers because its greatest weapon has gone off to make war in his own way. This is one of Aemond's most damaging failures, because it shows that he cannot subordinate personal violence to coordinated strategy. He wants to punish the riverlands. He wants to draw Daemon out. He wants to use Vhagar's terror directly. Meanwhile, armies still have to march, eat, survive, and fight. His burning of the riverlands should be described as both horrifying and limited. It is horrifying because ordinary people suffer beneath royal fire. It is limited because it does not give the Greens the decisive result they need. If anything, it helps turn Aemond into a symbol of why Targaryen rule becomes so hated during the dance. Dragons were once the reason the realm obeyed House Targaryen. During the Civil War, dragons become the reason many people fear and despise them. By the time Daemon challenges him, Aemond's path has narrowed. He has gone from wounded boy to dragon rider to kinslayer to regent to terror of the riverlands. Each stage strips away some other possible future. There is no version of Aemond after all this, where he can quietly become a normal prince. He has done too much. He is too hated. His reputation is too heavy. Daemon's challenge gives him the ending his life has been moving toward. Aemond cannot refuse, because refusing would destroy the image he has built. The rider of Vhagar cannot appear afraid of Daemon. The prince who killed Luke cannot avoid the rogue prince. The regent who wore Aegon's crown cannot let his uncle call him out and remain unanswered. So he goes. Alys goes with him to Harrenhal, pregnant according to the book. That detail makes the final scene feel even stranger. Aemond may be carrying the possibility of a future behind him, but he still chooses the duel. He does not turn toward survival, alliance, or retreat. He turns toward Daemon. His identity is built around the eye he lost, but the eye he has left becomes the place where death enters. Daemon's leap is so legendary that it can make Aemond seem passive in his own death, but that is not quite fair. Aemond shows up. He accepts the challenge. He rides the largest dragon alive into the most dangerous duel possible. He does not die because he lacks courage. He dies because courage is not the same as wisdom, and power is not the same as control. His death removes Vhagar from the war, and that is enormous. Vhagar is the last living dragon from the conquest. She represents the old power of House Targaryen more than any crown or sword. When she dies in the God's Eye, the dance loses one of its greatest living links to Aegon, Visenya, and the beginning of Targaryen rule in Westeros. Aemond takes that power with him into the lake. That is part of his legacy too. He does not only die, he helps end an age. The dance continues after Aemond, but without Vhagar, the green side loses its most terrifying advantage. Aegon still survives. Daeron and Tessarion still matter. Armies continue to fight. Rhaenyra's own position collapses later. But the death of Aemond and Vhagar changes the balance of fear. No one on the green side can replace what has been lost in the God's Eye. Aemond's body being found with Dark Sister in his eye gives the story a final brutality that feels almost designed by fate. His entire life after Driftmark is shaped by the missing eye. His title, image, anger, and legend grow around that wound. Then Daemon kills him through the other eye, and the sword remains there when the corpse is discovered. It is not subtle, but Targaryen history rarely is. The family lives through symbols: crowns, dragons, swords, prophetic dreams, strange births, burned castles, and bodies found in impossible places. Aemond's ending belongs to that world. It is history shaped like myth. If there is one sentence that explains him, it is not simply that he was evil. That is too easy. Aemond was a wounded prince who learned the wrong lesson from every wound. Aemond does not live long, but he touches almost every major thread of the dance. He is tied to Alicent and Otto's fears, Aegon's weakness, Rhaenyra's grief, Daemon's final act, Vhagar's death, Lucerys' murder, Rook's rest, the fall of King's Landing, the destruction in the riverlands, and the collapse of Targaryen dragon power. The book version of Aemond should feel colder and more brutal. The show version can be more emotional because it gives the audience access to his humiliation, insecurity, and regret. Both versions lead to the same central idea. Aemond Targaryen is what happens when a boy who feels powerless is handed the power to destroy almost anyone. The uncomfortable truth is that all of those reactions come from real parts of the character. Aemond is not compelling because he is innocent. He is compelling because the path from injury to cruelty is clear enough to understand, but dark enough that understanding cannot become forgiveness. In the end, Aemond Targaryen's entire history is the story of a second son who wanted to be feared more than he was pitied. He got his wish, and that was the tragedy.